What's going on, y'all? It's JD Pickell. Today on the Hard Count, what is the ripple effect of Brent Venables leaving Clemson to become the head coach at Oklahoma? Welcome into CFB with JD, the People's Channel. Everything you know, everything you love about college football happens here, happens nearly every single day. You drive the channel. You the one watching this video right now, you drive the channel. One way to do that is by following me on Twitter, okay, at JD Pickell. Not just because I want to feel important. That's a nice plus, honestly, and I'm not going to say that's where my worth lies, but you can do open-ended questions there. You can DM me. You can answer the polls that we have. A lot of things we do there end up here, okay? So follow me on Twitter at JD Pickell to contribute to that as much as possible. We want to hear from y'all. Armstrong Sims, Jack McKenzie, they do the real heavy lifting around here. Okay, so everything you see right now, production-wise, everything that happens thumbnail-wise, graphic-wise, that is all them. So we're extremely grateful for what they do and the way that they contribute to this entire operation. Brent Venables was the defensive coordinator at Clemson for what feels like eons, is now the head coach at Oklahoma. You know this unless you've been living under a rock. We've talked about it a fair amount on this channel. And it's a big get for Oklahoma. There's no denying that. But every coin has two sides, all right? So we're just going to talk about the ripple effect of what a hire for Brent Venables to Oklahoma means and what we've seen it mean for the entire college football landscape, most notably for Clemson, because I think there's a lot of interesting things that are happening right now in Clemson, South Carolina, to be honest with you. First and foremost, the recruiting shakeup that has happened. Right off the bat, that was the thing we saw. Clemson, DC, Brent Venables goes to Oklahoma, and that's on your ticker. And you saw decommit after decommit after decommit, especially on the defensive side of the ball, decommit from Clemson. And then, in turn, we saw a lot of guys sign up for Oklahoma late. We saw a lot of guys jump into the boat in the last minute, say, no, I want to play for that culture in Norman. I want to be on Brent Venables' team. I want to be a part of what they're building there because he talked to me and I think we've got some good things going and I believe in his vision. I trust him. So one, that tells us Brent Venables is a phenomenal recruiter. Two, it tells us Clemson is looking a little more thin. And anybody that knows anything about college football understands recruiting is the lifeblood of this sport. It's what makes it so much better than professional sports. You don't have a draft. You don't have a deal where the worst team from a year ago gets to have their first pick. No, every single year, regardless of what school you coach for, you have a chance to go recruit the same kids. And so for Oklahoma to be able to buoy their class and end up in the top 10, you switch your entire staff. Let's call a spade a spade. They've revamped their entire staff in Norman and still finished with a top 10 recruiting class. That is huge. On the flip side, Clemson, a powerhouse, not just in the ACC, but nationally for the last however many years, they're now thin. That's going to potentially be something that we see down the road impact them. We saw it already this year. They weren't, not this year. Let's regroup there. Clemson had a phenomenal defense last year. On the offensive side of the ball, realistically, they were probably a few skill players away from being really, really good. They had a top 10 defense nationally. Hats off to Brent Venables, but they missed some things on the offensive side of the ball. So now you're going to turn around and say, okay, we're not going to recruit as well, meaning we have less depth and we have less guys to develop. That could spell trouble for Clemson. That will spell trouble for Clemson if they can't figure it out in quick, fast, in a hurry. Now, stability. That's one of the things that I think we have watched most closely is Oklahoma had chaos, right? Lincoln Riley leaves, your quarterback leaves. A lot of poise shown by Oklahoma and the administration. I know they had their whole press release thing, whatever. I'm not too worried about that. They get their guy in the boat, and then they get their quarterback in the boat. Okay, so two of arguably the most important pieces to a successful program are in place. Now, remains to be seen how much they will do on the field this coming year, but as much as you can do before you play any games, it feels like they did that in what is now college football free agency with getting their quarterback and obviously getting their head coach. For Clemson, you had an interesting crossroads because Dabo Swinney is a big culture guy, right? They protect that culture. It's the reason why they haven't gone into the transfer portal very much, if at all. I think they took their first transfer, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, and it was a kid that had already been at Clemson. So they're not really touching the transfer portal. Same thing with the coaches. They're not really going out and about and trying to bring in a new guy here, a new guy there. They're trying to promote from within. So they did just that. Wesley Goodwin, first-time defensive coordinator. He coached high school football for a long time before coming to Clemson. Now at Clemson, you have a guy who's never called defense before calling your plays for what has been in the past a premier program in college football. It is starkly different contrasts for what is going on in Norman and what's going on in Clemson, South Carolina. There's a lot of pieces shifting. And why is this important? Well, I think across the entire national landscape, this is what I want to get to kind of conclude our time here, the power balance in college football is all over the place. I mean, a year ago, before the season started, I sat in this very chair and told you I'm picking Clemson to win the national title. Now, a couple months later, I look like a real fool, but knowing what we knew at the time, Clemson had been a routine visitor to the college football playoff. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head how many times they missed it. It was for sure a 1 to 2. It was single digits, needless to say, because the thing's been around for single digit years. You get my gist. They had been a routine customer to the college football playoff. Now, one bad season, DC leaves. This is a huge year for Clemson. To have a first-time OC, a first-time DC, all of this because your DC left, okay? And I think, honestly, Brent Venables leaving, I don't know exactly what the timeline was with Tony Elliott leaving. I think that had something to do with it. I think Brent Venables was the cornerstone of that staff next to Dabo Swinney, and him not jumping ship, but him seeking greener pastures, I think sent a message to the entire program that things are shifting, and we've seen that. So a year ago, we would have said we want more parity in college football, right? That's what a lot of people were saying, me not being one of them. But a lot of people were saying, well, we already know the college football playoff. It's going to be Clemson. It's going to be Oklahoma. It's going to be Alabama. It's going to be Ohio State. I think that's verbatim who I picked to be in the college football playoff. Now, sitting here close to a year later, you have Clemson, who we don't even know if they're going to compete for the ACC next year. I mean, legitimately, they were a shoo-in every single year for the past however many years to win that conference. We don't even know if they're going to be a top 4 team in that conference, legitimately. And that's not me being, hyperbolic over here. That's just the genuine truth because of how many things are changing and shifting from new coaches, new recruits. The culture is in such a fresh place in Clemson, South Carolina because of what's happened in Norman. Take it a step further, you have 2 teams that have been, like I said, routine college football playoff candidates now taking on very different faces in what they're going to be as programs going forward. So Oklahoma, like I said, they feel more stable, but Clemson, they've got to feel like there's a lot of things up in the air for the first time in however many years. All of that because one defensive coordinator decided to take a job at Oklahoma to be the head coach. A lot of things shifting. We're going to continue to follow this as the season progresses. Again, not the offseason, the season in general. We're in preseason. The season is coming very, very soon, and we will unpack that as it continues to unload and continue to give us more of what the beautiful thing is that college football is. I don't think that sentence made sense. We'll keep the party rolling. We will see y'all next time.